Right now, I'd like to welcome our first guest, Bob Carlson. Bob Carlson's editor of the monthly newsletter and website called Retirement Watch, the first publication to cover all the financial aspects of retirement. His latest book is the revised edition of The New Rules of Retirement, which was originally published in 2004. He has written numerous other books and reports, including The New Rules of Estate Planning and Securing Your Lifetime Stream of Income. I'm going to have to read that one myself. He has appeared on many national television and radio programs, and we're happy to have him with us today. Bob, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
First, tell us, please, a little bit about the Retirement Watch for those who might not be familiar with it.
Well, as you said, it's a monthly newsletter. It covers all the financial aspects of retirement planning, any problem you could run into from estate planning, managing your IRAs, reducing income taxes, how to evaluate annuities, whether or not to buy them, Medicare, long-term care, pretty much any financial issue you could run into in your retirement or your retirement planning. I try to cover it and give people some independent research and advice on it.
Now, my question is, what motivated you to kind of take this on as a passion in your life? You know, if you think about it, and I know in your experience, you had overseen some very large state pension funds and so on. So you must have seen some horror stories, seen some people make some common mistakes. And what are some of those mistakes that you've seen repeatedly that perhaps motivated you to make this your passion in life over the last 14 years?
Well, I started out doing taxes. I was trained as an attorney and a CPA, so I started out with income taxes, and I was doing a newsletter on taxes, and I realized suddenly I was getting a lot of questions about IRAs and retirement plans and how to handle distributions from them. And as I looked around, I saw there was no good source I could recommend to people. So the more I considered it, the more I realized there was a kind of an information gap for retirement financial information, particularly both IRA management and estate planning. So I stepped into that with the newsletter, and we can continue to see a lot of very common mistakes people make, particularly with their IRAs when it comes to distribution time or leaving it to their heirs. They make frequent mistakes when they're trying to take money out or managing their IRAs, doing the estate planning part of it. Money gets left on the table.
Sure. But just for a minute, though, focusing on this concept of the dangers of scams and pitfalls and everything else in planning for retirement, do you think that a lot of people underestimate the dangers of scams and frauds? Is this something you address periodically in Retirement Watch? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I do. Research has shown that the people who are most likely to get caught in a scam in retirement are those who don't fit the traditional profile. The traditional profile is you have someone very old, living alone, a very reduced cognitive function, who falls for some kind of scam. Now, these are the people who are most likely to be a victim of financial abuse, but scams actually, the research shows, are perpetrated on other types of people, actually people who are very confident, who have a lot of their cognitive function, and who think they're very unlikely to be victims of scams are actually the ones who are more likely to be victims. Because their confidence is high, they have their guard down, they're more open to new ideas, and so these are the people who actually are more likely to fall for scams rather than this stereotypical profile.
Let me ask you this, getting away from the scams for just a minute. I find, and I want to see if you find this too, is that, for example, a lot of do-it-yourself investors fall into the same trap. A lot of people, there are some people that really have great abilities, great knowledge of markets, and they do it themselves, they do a great job. But there's a lot of people out there that do it themselves that are overconfident in their ability to manage their money. Just like you mentioned a few minutes ago, some are overconfident in their ability to avoid scams. And if they're overconfident in their own beliefs that they can avoid financial losses, and then all of a sudden a big bear market comes, they get hit worse sometimes. I mean, have you seen that, as I've seen that with a lot of do-it-yourself investors?
Right. Confidence is a big factor in determining who's the most likely to be hurt by a scam. ARP has done a couple studies over the years. Some other people have. And the likelihood of being subject to a scam is highly correlated with people assessing themselves as being very good with their finances and their investments. The higher someone's confidence level is about their financial knowledge and their financial ability, the more likely they are to make snap decisions to fall for one of these scams. So if you're feeling confident, if you're feeling like you're not likely to be a victim of a scam, that's kind of a red flag, and you should throttle back a little.
Confidence is a great quality in life, but sometimes it can work against you. I see that with fellow pilots too that are too confident. They scare me sometimes. But Bob, stick around. We'll be right back. And you stay with us too. We'll be right back with more from Bob Carlson. And right now it's time to welcome back our new friend, Bob Carlson. You know, it's a great point you make, Bob, because it's I know your background's a CPA, so you're very probably mathematical by nature, very left-brained. But you made a very important right-brain point that what emotions, what overconfidence can do to hurt somebody, and I hinted toward it. I see that even in flying. You know, there's a lot of people who, like myself, are business owners that are pilots that fly airplanes, and you know, some of them end up being just super confident, and they're the ones that scare me the most. Those are the ones I never want to get into a cockpit with because they think it can never happen to them. And you know, the good pilots know it can happen at any time. I've got to be ready for it. So I thought that was really a wonderful point. But I want to ask you about tax scams and frauds. You know, you come from a tax background, and of course now there's this whole thing out there where you'll get messages on voicemails and answering machines saying, you know, this is the IRS calling, you must call us in 24 hours, or we take pity on you as to what's going to happen. I'm sure you've heard about some of these things. How can they get away with this when these scams are that broad brush?
Yeah, I have. In fact, I've gotten some of those calls myself.
Me too.
Yeah, there's several ways to get away with it. One of them is technology. They're calling from overseas, but they're able to do what's called caller ID spoofing, and they can make you think they're calling from right next door, the local IRS office. So the caller ID, which is supposed to protect people, actually works against them because people have figured out how to fool the caller ID to make it look like it's coming from a U.S. government phone or an IRS phone. So that's one way they do it.
Okay. So tell our viewers, though, if they get a call from somebody who's at the IRS, for example, who says they're at the IRS, how can they determine whether it's real or not?
Well, first, the IRS will not make an unscheduled phone call to you. If they're going to tell you you owe them money,
right,
or if they want to audit your taxes, they're going to send you a letter.
Heck, it's hard to get them on the phone when you try to call them, so I'd have to imagine they're not going to make an unscheduled call.
Right. It's not going to be an email. It's not going to be a phone call unless you called them ahead of time and said, please have someone call me. So if you're getting a phone call from someone who claims they're from the IRS, they're not. You can pretty much just hang up on them. And even if it is someone from the IRS, they're not going to take an action right away. They understand what people are thinking and why people are skeptical, so they're going to send you a letter again anyway. So if someone's calling you and saying they're from the IRS, if you're not expecting them, if you haven't been having a back and forth with them already, then it's a scam.
Great advice. Great advice. You know, it's the IRS always sends letters first. It's amazing. Smart people. There's actually someone in our office several years younger than myself who's a real smart guy, almost fell victim to that kind of scam, got really close, and then all of a sudden his senses started to go off saying something just isn't quite right here. So, Bob, we need to take one more commercial break. Stay with us. I hope we know each other right now well enough after talking for 8 minutes or so together. I hope we know each other well that I can ask you a personal question in our next segment. Can I do that?
Yeah, we can give it a try.
All right, let's give it a try then. And you stay with us too. We'll be right back with more from Bob Carlson. Right now it's time to welcome back Bob Carlson. Bob, you know, I you heard earlier on the show that I basically got naked in front of our entire audience, proverbially speaking, and told them about a personal experience where I was defrauded of over $100,000 early on in my career. So I'd like to ask you, have you ever had a personal experience where you were defrauded, whether it's a big amount of money, small amount of money, and how did it feel personally, and what did you learn from it?
Well, I can't say I've been defrauded, but early on, when I first started investing, I was persuaded to buy some rare coins.
Okay. And that's fine, Bob. You can always say to our audience that, you know, I have a friend who bought some rare coins, and they'll buy that 100%. So that's always a good technique for television.
Yeah. So it wasn't a fraud. They delivered the coins and such, but you know, there's a high markup on those, and the market tends to be a bit manipulated by people. And actually, it was going up in price, and I was ready to sell, and I called the guy up and said, okay, I'm ready to sell and take some of these profits. And he didn't call back. I actually had to go find another broker to buy them back. And he, you know, did not give me as much as this other guy indicated they were worth at the time. So I didn't get out of it what I was expecting, and there was a lot of, you know, costs and markups involved. So I learned a lesson there.
So my best guess is you probably don't own a lot of Bitcoin or cyber currencies either then.
No, I'm sticking with the liquid markets where the price is on the internet every day, and I can be sure what it's worth.
Stick with the tried and true, a man after my own heart. I love it. So in closing today, in the 30 seconds or so we have left, what are 2 or 3 of the most important pieces of advice that you have for our income generation members, our loyal viewers, on how they could prevent themselves from being scammed or defrauded?
Well, there's really 3 important points. One is don't make a decision in a hurry. Particularly if you're an older person, your decision-making ability is slower than it used to be. So anytime you're presented with an investment idea...
So number 1, slow down. Slow down. Number 2?
Related to that is talk it over with people. If you don't have a professional advisor, you should at least have some, you know, intelligent, knowledgeable friends or relatives.
Number 2, second opinion. And I hear the music in my ear, so real quick, number 3.
And the third one is if you're feeling emotions, don't make a decision. You should not make a decision when you're feeling emotional.
Perfect advice, Bob. Time flies when you're having fun. Thank you for being with us. And you stay with us. We'll be right back with more on the income generation.